Alright. Hello everybody, this is AW. It's been a while since I made an update video, so just some life updates. For those of you who don't know, I was trucking for the last 5 months and was over the road trucking, not local trucking. So I've been living in a truck for almost half a year. Not that fun, but I did get to drive all across to the other side of the United States, to the East Coast, and actually meet up with my best friend because of it. Probably wouldn't have happened very soon had it not been for that. So that was pretty nice. As far as like driving on the road, it's not so bad. The long haul part of trucking is the easy part. The hard part is parking and being in the city. Luckily I didn't get too many bad spots, but there were some bad spots. But you know, that's neither here nor there. It's just part of the job. Aside from that, I suppose you get cabin fever. You get stuck on a truck and don't get to exercise or particularly go anywhere besides truck stops, unless you want to pay for Ubers on the weekend, which I didn't. I was spending enough money already on food, so spending an extra $20 to go, here and there was not within my budget. So, yeah. If you ask me, what did I learn from all of that? Well, I drove mainly from California up to Oregon and Washington. Not too bad of a drive, not much to see there. I was surprised by the states that I liked the most regarding landscapes. Utah is a hidden gem, completely unknown and underrated. I had never heard of it, but it is very nice. The I-70 through Utah into Colorado is it's definitely the most beautiful highway I've ever driven on. It is worth driving on at least once in your life. Second best place is actually Nevada. Nevada, where Las Vegas is at, which is generally a desert. But actually, North and South Nevada is not a desert. Well, it is a desert, but it's a green desert of sorts. And it's actually quite nice. If you like a green drive with stuff that doesn't look like a forest like you get in California, it's worth a drive. Arizona, the northern part of Arizona at least, connecting to Nevada, is actually quite nice. Very interesting, some canyons you can drive through. I think it's on the 15. So that's worth checking out. Unfortunately, didn't get to drive through Arizona and hit the Grand Canyon or anything, but that'll be another time. Hopefully not trucking. Beyond that, I'm done trucking for now. Taking a break, so as some of you may notice, I will start posting things a bit more often. Doing work on the encyclopedia, which is getting done much faster than I expected, quite frankly. In the first week, I cranked out about 4 pretty finished articles, and I only have about 8 left which are not started. Which, at least on the topics, once I get started, it'll probably be rather quick to bring them to near completion, barring some information that I need to slow down and read with, or rather read up on. But yeah, work on that is going to go pretty consistently. Don't get your hopes up on the encyclopedia being public this year. I may finish quite a few things within the 3 months that I am planning to take off, but beyond that, there's a rabbit. Well, you missed it. Sat out of the corner of my eyes. But even though the articles are mostly finished, it takes some time for things to sit in the back of your mind, for you to like stand back, just let it simmer and cook in the background, and come back to it a few months later with a clear perspective, and notice all the grammar mistakes, and moreover, and more importantly, the explanatory gaps and the nonsensical things that you might have thought made sense in the passion of writing when they actually don't. So that will, even if I finish much of what I want to finish for the launch, I won't be launching anytime soon. You know, earliest one could probably expect is later, next year, probably fourth quarter. There's a lot of things that I want to do prior to launch. I think I want to do a little bit of a media campaign. Not that there's much of to do regarding these things, but there are like podcasts that I can hit, communities I can do AMAs on, and having the encyclopedia stuff in the back pocket is something to make hype about. It is some unique, high-quality stuff that you won't see anywhere else. That's why I'm making it. If it had already existed, I wouldn't have bothered. I'd have something else that's like throw at people and say, look, read this other resource, check it out, it's good. Unfortunately, there isn't such a resource, so I have to be the one who makes it. Let's see. What else? Besides that, not much else. Perhaps you notice it, I don't know. Sometimes I think I do, sometimes I don't. It's probably a matter of perception. But of course, you sit in a truck for 5 months, you're not very mobile, you're not eating very healthily. Well, what happens is you gain a little weight. So for the first time in my life, I've broken past the 130 pound line that I had, and I hit close to 140. I've never weighed that much, while that is within my healthy weight range. I don't know, it feels like it definitely feels tighter on the stomach area. There's at least one pair of pants that I can't comfortably wear which is new to me. That hasn't happened probably since middle school or something. And also, I don't know, maybe I look a bit cheekier. You tell me. I'm not a very good judge of visuals regarding people's aesthetics. I usually tend to consciously ignore it. As you notice, I am walking in an area where it's a walking area, unlike the usual places where I go, where there usually aren't people. So I'm usually not bothered or bothering other people by doing these walk and talks. But I actually went and met up with a very old friend from high school that I haven't seen in quite a while. Just caught up and forgot that I wanted to go out for a walk before I went back home. So by the time I disconnected from them, I wanted to go for a walk, do a video, and this was the only place within reasonable distance. So it is what it is, and discomfort is more my own, and feeling weird with other people around. But it's something that you gotta get over. I gotta get over. What else? So besides encyclopedia, I'll be doing some videos, readings usually of some of the articles that are still generally finalized, but not fully public. I've actually already done that before on the channel. But I'm still working on certain writings. Not sure which one I should focus on that would be helpful for the channel. but it'll work itself out. I got a new computer, have a desktop for the first time since 2017, so 6 years. Yeah, close to almost exactly 6 years, if not a bit more. So, before that, I've been on a laptop this entire time, and which made it really hard to work on many things, which is why I had not gone on and done much until very recently this year, in which I finally sucked it up and said, look, okay, fine. The stuff on laptop is very annoying to work on, particularly video editing, sound editing. It's hard to mess around with a touchpad for mouse, but it's not impossible. And so I sucked it up and started doing things. And obviously, as you can see, I made quite a bit of videos, and so it wasn't that bad, but it still sucks. And having a desktop makes it so much easier to do those things. So far less excuses. Much easier to write, much easier to do creative things. So hopefully some things get done more than less on those things. What else? There's people behind me. They're kind of loud. Hopefully it doesn't come through on the mic very much, because they're kind of annoying me. But if they annoy you, that's even worse. As you can see, it's not too bad a little trail. It's not that big of a trail, quite frankly. But it's the kind of trail it's alright, if you live close by and you're just like, I just don't want to walk around my shitty little block. I just want to have some modicum of nature. And so you go, well, let's go out and do a little circuit around the local park. It's a bit of walking park, but it's not that great. Certainly not as nice as the hills I usually walk on. And as usual, I take the paths less trodden. Mainly because I just don't like being around people, quite frankly. Stuff to talk about, stuff on my mind. I always have stuff on my mind at the same time. My mind blanks whenever I put the stupid phone on record. Well, I recently finished, mostly finished the article on God, specifically for the Hegel Encyclopedia. Banged it out quite quickly to its mostly finalized form, and actually surprised at how quickly that was. The stuff that I had in my mind, I thought I would have to engage some deeper writings far longer, but it turned out that I didn't have to, so that's pretty good. I posted about it on my Twitter. Seems a lot of people are excited for that kind of article. It is a unique article. There's nothing like it. There's no article that brings together the things that I'm talking about. So it's also a pretty hot topic. Everybody wants to know about, what does Hegel think about God? What is, do you have to believe in God to be a Hegelian? Yes, you do. But don't worry, you don't have to just believe it, you can know it. That's what makes it so great. So, spent yesterday and today working on that. Spent some time reworking that today. Just slowly editing, doing passes, and I'll probably do many passes on that. Other stuff, free will. A friend of mine asked if I could write an article on free will. It's a hot topic all the time, and sure, why not? I mean, it's actually not as complex a topic as you might think. It's rather short to dispense with. The main thing is proving it. Well, obviously, any Hegelian proof is near impossible to express, without just repeating the movements that Hegel makes himself. You have to put yourself into a mindset of absolute abstraction of sorts, and most people aren't going to find that convincing. So the main issue with the framing of an article on that is getting a framing device for making the problem intuitive, because you're not going to get people in a headspace of abstraction to do a proof proper, but you can make an argument backed up by intuition, such that most people will find that hard to disagree with. And that's the nature of formal arguments, and arguments, which are assumptive. But that's what you gotta write if you're going to plop somebody into the middle of this stuff. The main points of it is just clarifying two things: what is freedom and what is will. Because in free will you're qualifying the will as free. Well, what does that mean? What are you talking about? And then once you have freedom set forth, you just need to clarify what the will itself is, and then does the square fit into the square hole? If it does, there you go. The will is free, done deal, question answered. It's not something you see very often tackled in essays of these things. People just go on and assume what freedom is. No prior discussion about, how does that make any sense? How do we have an intelligible concept of freedom? Why would we accept a concept that is nonsense, like libertarian freedom, or determinism, or the freedom attacked by determinism, and some such. So, yeah. I mean, I suppose I could take some time to recount what that argument generally looks like. Freedom, for example, in the libertarian sense of freedom from, just absolute freedom from, is nonsense. If the whole being, nothing, becoming thing, what the issue of unlimitation is. It's indeterminate, it is nothing. The freedom which is defined in that way just is a whole lot of nothing. It's not freedom. You need to be something to be free. Freedom needs to be determinate. And determinateness and determinism are not the same thing. Determinateness has to do with just, existential standing out, whereas determinism has to do with things being given their determination by something else, usually in concerns of causal relationships and orders. And those things are related, but not fully pertinent in the usual sense. Causality has nothing to do with physics, has nothing to do with space or time. Empirical science has nothing to say about such things. Robert Sapolsky recently released a book claiming that he has proven that free will does not exist, and Sapolsky's an idiot. The guy, I forget what his name is, the professor who runs the channel, Carefree Wandering, is definitely a bit of an edgelord when it comes to those things. He's a bit of a postmodernist. He's not the worst, but he's also, not the best philosopher. And so he actually did an interview with Sapolsky in which he was basically kissing Sapolsky's ass. And it was kind of cringe just to watch a couple minutes of it, honestly, skipping around. I didn't watch the whole thing. I've listened to Sapolsky's argument before in prior podcasts, actually before he released the book. Sapolsky has been yammering about this for years. And not that I pay attention to him, because I haven't liked him for a long time. I don't think I've ever liked him. I found out about him after my atheist phase, and I think it was around the time I got into Marx, and so by that time, a lot of the stuff that he talks about just was like suspect bourgeois science to me, and it still is. Somebody who's like just unaware of his own assumptions in the background, overdetermining his reasoning. It's not the neurons that are overturning anything, Sapolsky. It's the fact that you have a culture that's fucked up and you don't think about it. Well, anyways, freedom in Hegelianism is self-determination. That concerns, a distinction between other determination, which is the determinations one finds in determinism, something determining something else, and all things are determined by something else ad infinitum. Therefore, everything is a slave and nobody is free, nothing is free. Easy enough. And self-determination is that which, creates its own differences within itself, of itself, from itself, to itself. Paradigmatic model of that is a living organism, which, according to its own nature, creates its own ordered body, generates its specific divisions as organs of that body, regenerates those organs, and the body as a whole is one process. And then when you ask why is this or that being done by the organism or happening in the organism, the answer is, well, something about the organism as an organism. It's not going to be something appealing to lower orders like chemistry, something like physics, or whatnot. The same thing thus happens with the will. And what is the will? Well, the will is, according to Hegel, a distinct mode of cognition. Now, there is theoretical cognition, which is the apparent receptivity of the mind shaping itself to match or reflect objects out there, in a concept in here, in the mind. The practical cognition is the opposite. You take a concept in here and you try to make it real out there. And practical cognition overarches theoretical cognition in that it is the one that is primarily focused on the distinction between my concept and the world. And I was going down this road, but it leads to that house. And that's a no-go. Practical cognition makes the distinction between myself and the world, grasps the entirety of the theoretical cognition, which appears to it and is represented to it as the I, and then from the standpoint of the internal total theoretical cognition, generates concepts from within itself, which then it tries to actualize in the world through the knowledge of the link between the concept and its objectivity. So, I have a concept of something like fire. I understand what this concept is. It's the process of fire, requires some kind of fuel, requires some kind of combustion catalyst, and then the process, takes care of itself. And so, in my practical cognition, I carry out my concept in objectivity and create real, actual fire, and my will has been done and realized. Now, that's a pretty low-level act of will, but it is an act of will nonetheless, because the will, in particular, is not just concerning whatever desires willy-nilly are in my head, but most particularly it concerns rational desires, rational purposes. So what properly belongs to my will as a will is these purely rational a priori principles or concepts. Things like happiness is not something that is out there, which is present in me as a reflection. Rather, happiness is a concept originary to the mind. It is a totality of pleasure, an idealization in which, I project an infinity upon that and qualify it as a whole, and, that I have this concept of happiness. Hegel says happiness is the first real concept of the will, the first real object which pertains to the will as well, where the objective of any will whatsoever is to be happy, in some sense. But what is happiness, to a will? Well, to every person, happiness, because it is a totality of pleasure. Every person has their own individual pleasures, people like this or that. So it is a universal, but is an indeterminate universal, which, people can fill in whatever the hell just happens to be there within their desires. If you like candy, candy makes you happy. If you want happiness, you understand that candy gives you pleasure. It's part of the totality of pleasure. Therefore, eat candy because you ought to be happy. Easy peasy. At the highest level, the proper object of the will is freedom, in which the will just wills itself to be free. It desires freedom, and in order to acquire freedom, it has to actually cognize itself as will, understand itself, and determine itself. And the whole theoretical cognition is already the free determination of the concept within my mind. In the objective will, I should have this already as a possibility before me, or an actual possibility in which I have a real understanding of the concept in some manner. And then understanding that, there is a particular rational desire in the desire for freedom, in which part of the desire for freedom is the desire to be rational so that I may accomplish my ends. And part of the ends of reason are to be rational as such, just because rationality satisfies us. Not only is it clearly useful to be knowledgeable, to engage with the world objectively, so that, our will may be done, but there is a rational pleasure available to us in the fact that we take great satisfaction in knowing that we know and knowing how we know and being able to justify ourselves to other people. And, if we can do this absolutely, and especially the justification of ourselves, to our own reason, we engage in a pretty high level of abstraction. The whole of reason, as abstracted from the world, it's not determined by the external reality of things. Reason is completely self-determining. The logic, or the science of logic, is the proof of this. This being achieved, I know what reason looks like. I wish to shape the rest of my understanding of the world according to my reason, which is me, because I am indeed, as the I represented within myself, the faculty of, theoretical cognition and reasoning as a whole, presented to myself, as a personality. And therefore, in that, the will becomes its own object. We start out with the will towards freedom. We engage in the process of learning about freedom, learning about reasoning itself. we achieve that, and we have therefore accomplished the free will, in which, we have the fully imminently determined, non-given, self-given determination of our reasoning as ourselves. And therefore, what is that if not freedom? At that point, there is only the unfreedom of a relative unfreedom regarding my will as containing a theoretical concept which may have trouble being realized out in the world because of objective factors that limit it. And certainly there, the will is limited. But the will can certainly will itself. If I have a desire that is unrealizable, my understanding that it is unrealizable allows me, to some measure, rearrange and reorient my will, to leave that desire, and acknowledge that it's going to go nowhere, that I'm wasting my time, that, pining away for it is not going to do anything, and it's just a worthless endeavor, and thus you move on to something else. The grass is greener somewhere else. Ooh, got this little annoying little fly thing. So, not only do you have this abstract universal consideration of the will as, my established self-reasoning, but then I have the individuated form in which I can take the desires which are strong within me and which, belong to me and are mine insofar as I recognize they're mine. Maybe I have desires that are fucked up, and I realize, I shouldn't want that, and I refuse to want that. I will not feed into that, and I will starve that desire and, focus my mind on other things, because I don't want to be that kind of person. And therefore I have enforced my will by, not just taking what is given within me. A lot of people, particularly with, for example, pornography and sex, a lot of people get into kinks because, well, it turns me on. That's it. That's the only reason. Well, yeah, that's pretty weird. It's pretty fucked up. But hey, it turns me on. And what do you know? You can't help it. And so they just go on with it. Obviously, if you're a rational person, it doesn't matter whether it turns you on or not. If a rational person goes, okay, yeah, that is pretty fucked up. It turns me on. But you know what? Screw it. Fuck those desires. Fuck that feeling, because I am a rational human being. That is not what a rational human being does. That's not good for me. That's not good for anybody. I'm not going to feed into it. I'm not going to enable this condition within myself. I'm going to starve it of its psychic resources, as taking part of my mind and dominating me and, turning me into something less than human, by succumbing to these irrational desires. Which, hard to believe that happens, but that happens. It's happened with me. Happens with many people. Plenty of people, have a weird tastes in things, and they realize, yeah, it's not quite right, so I'm not gonna go along with that. Don't care. If it turns me on, don't care if I like it. It's not healthy, so don't go with it. Health, for example, just speaking about it, is another concept of the will. It is a universal, has nothing to do with empirical derivations whatsoever. It is a priori. It concerns the nature of a thing. And so, the health is a free concept, and it is a concept of the will. What more is there to really say about that? So, in that way, the will wills itself. We will ourselves to be free and rational, and therefore, when we encounter irrationalities and unfree things within us and outside us, we judge against ourselves as free, the conception of freedom itself. And, we say, well, it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't do those things shouldn't be, and therefore I will act, to mitigate those factors within me and around me, or, I will act to create the conditions for a positive enabling of my freedom. And as such, yet again, the will determines itself quite well. So, in all that, is the will free? Duh. I mean, it's clear as day. There's no mystery to it. It's not magic. Once you understand those things, it's kind of like a non-question. There's no point in even asking, quite frankly. It's quite obvious. Hegel says that to speak of free will is like speaking about free freedom. It's kind of, a pointless repetition. The will is always already a mode of freedom as such. Even, the pettiest will over anything is still a will, and it's still a freedom. And is the will reducible to choice? No. Choice is part of the will, necessarily. Choice concerns the capacity of the individual to abstract themselves from everything, to behold all matters of its desires before itself, and to choose among them based on its own internal principles as to what it is rationally. So there are people with really fucked up desires, and they can't control them very well. Some people, there's a line that Jesus says somewhere in the New Testament. I don't memorize these things, but it's vaguely in my mind, where he says, if your hand causes you to sin, just chop it off. It's better to get rid of that temptation, if you can't handle it. So in many ways, there are people who have desires that they can't handle. And, it's suffering for them. I don't know if you saw that hair run off. And what Hegel say would be the free will aspect of this. One would be to, deny that desire, not that will. It's not will in the sense of Schopenhauer, but deny that desire, which just happens to be in you, and you deny that it's you. Because against what many people think, that just because a thing appears within your mind, it's yours. No, it's not. And look at that, it's a nice sunset. This is actually a nice little hill. Look at that, it's a very aesthetic little view. So there's plenty of things that, just because the desire wells in you, just because the thought appears within your mind, you don't have to go and say, oh man, that's me. Why did I think of that? You didn't think of shit. Well, the thought just appeared. Why it appeared, you don't know. Sometimes, maybe there's something behind it, something in the background of your mind, unconscious, and so on. Other ones are probably, just random things. Sometimes you just have random thoughts just pop into your head, which have nothing to do with anything. It happened to me quite a bit. Maybe having a discussion about somebody, or even just watching a video about somebody, and I would just have these fucking stupid thoughts, just insulting them, and I'm, my immediate reaction is, why would that come up in my mind? That has nothing to do with anything. I don't hate this person, I don't know this person, I'm not mad at this person, I have nothing to do against this person. Why did this thought come up? Well, just thoughts pop up in your head sometimes. That's it. You don't have to acknowledge it's my thought. Oh, somehow, perhaps secretly, I want this. No, it's nothing to do with it. So, in point, Robert Sapolsky is an idiot. Regarding the God thing, the article on God, I may turn into my first return video. For a recorded lecture of sorts. I still have to think about it. I still have to sit on that article and just straighten some things out. Some stuff has been pointed out to me by Hegelian Christians that I've talked to that have kind of made some ambiguities that they don't quite like concerning Christian dogma, which is perfectly fine. So I'll do a little bit of studying on that. And I'll certainly adjust things as needed. You don't want to present anything false. And just look at that again. That is a nice view. The sky is not so blue, but the rest of it is pretty close. So yeah, that's about it. I will be on my Discord quite a bit more. I'll be doing some readings, but it will be on my own time. If you want to be part of it, see you on there. If not, like the reading on the introduction of the encyclopedia, it will be recorded because these things are readings that I'm doing mainly to catch up on some things for the encyclopedia. And apart from that, it's also, just on the fly commentary, and people find that useful here and there. So, I'll definitely be recording those, no issue. And I'm at home now. I got plenty of time. Beyond that, the new computer, the desktop computer I got, is capable of playing video games. I don't know what the fuck to play. I don't know what people play nowadays. So I don't know. Suggest some games, you PC gamers out there. Because I'm looking around to find something to fill my time. Because I'm not doing philosophy and Hegel 24/7. I'm not that kind of nerd. I know plenty of people nowadays. They're just philosophy nerds, and they make philosophy jokes. And I bet some of these people today's Halloween. I forgot about that, and I was actually reminded of that this morning. I was reminded about that earlier this evening when I went to meet up with my friend, and I just remember that again. Because I don't usually celebrate these days. It has nothing to do with me. But it is an American thing. When you're a kid, it's probably really fun. Probably not as fun today as it used to be. One, there's not as many kids these days. Two, the U.S. is not as safe as it used to be. So, sucks for the new generation. But yeah, probably these people are having Halloween parties and they're dressing up as Hegel and Schopenhauer and all these other things. Get a life, you nerds. The irony of a book nerd calling these other people nerds. It happens, but it's just weird. I'm not one of those people. Philosophy is part of my life. It's like how I think you should treat your religion. It's part of your life. It's a big part, heavily important. But it's not a fucking pageantry or a cosplay kind of thing, If Jesus is important to you, live your life along the principles of Jesus and Christianity as a whole. But don't fucking peddle it around as a fucking identity. Same thing, philosophy is a way of life. The great philosophers did not spend their time making cringe memes on the internet, making terrible puns and jokes about their 2-bit philosophers that nobody cares about except other philosopher nerds who have no life. But I have a life outside of books and academia and philosophy and talking about this stuff. Most of the time you turn into my server and on Discord and we're not discussing anything. It's we discuss philosophy only insofar as other people discuss it. On our own, usually we're just talking life stuff and maybe some politics, geopolitics. Who knows? But it's not all encompassing in my life. Actually, I should take some time to do a bit of art appreciation, because you can never have too much of that, quite frankly. Actually, I was writing a thing, I might publish it as a blog, responding to somebody's video on why Christian games suck. Because indeed Christian games suck. And what makes them suck is that they're Christian first and game second. And you can't do that with games. You gotta make a game, a game, and it's got to be fun as a game. You can't just like make it game, as a secondary thing. It's got to be the primary thing for a game. But anyways, they made a great video just pointing out like why these games suck, obviously, and it's primarily because one, Christians, at least in the U.S., take religion to be a very serious thing, and so gamifying Christianity does not fly in Protestant Christianity for the most part. And then the Christian message for something to be Christian is, have you accepted Jesus Christ into your heart as your Lord and Savior? If not, you better do so. You're going to go to hell, and you better start going to church at least once a week. And on your free days off, while you're not at church, you better be talking about Jesus and singing about Jesus and telling people that they ought to accept Jesus into their lives, or else they're going to hell forever. That does not make for a great game, if that has to be the primary focus of your games, which is why, a lot of like Christian stuff is just like pseudo edutainment, just to try to get you to read more of the Bible, and, like get you to believe more of these stupid stories in the Bible. But my little response, not an essay, it's not big enough to talk, I'll call it an essay, it's barely a page long, is just talking about, well, what would a good Christian game look like, and first off, most Christians will not accept that it is a Christian game, because the primary focus cannot be to tell you that you need to accept Jesus Christ into your heart. It ain't gonna happen. You can have that as a secondary theme of some characters in your world, but you cannot have that as the main point of story, the main point of contention, and you cannot have that as some kind of gamified option, and somewhere at the game, during the game, where like a priest asks, do you accept Jesus Christ in your heart, and a pseudo like baptism is carried on, in which like the intention is that you in real life have actually been converted. No. Even in the games, like nobody likes that. It's garbage. I mean, if you played Bioshock Infinite, the introduction of that is hot garbage. It's just stupid. And people are walking by. Let me turn that around. No, to get a theme on that is actually like worth something. And God, look at those clouds. I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom into the detail. Just look at that fine, soft, velvety outline. On the screen, that does not look too far off from what it really looks like. It's a bit more yellow. It's a bit more light pinkish rather than yellow on the center right there. But the rest of it actually looks pretty dang close. Very nice. I'll keep it focused on that because it's a nice little view. What was I saying? Oh yeah, conversion cannot be a thing. Hitting you on the head with the Bible cannot be a thing. But can you have like Christian themed games in which like a genuine Christian message is part of the game? Yeah. Christian mythology, which includes the Old Testament mythology stuff, is pretty radical. Radical in the old 90s sense. So, it's pretty brutal. It would be pretty cool to see in the details if somebody actually went ahead and had a vision for it. You can create a world with the metaphysics of Christianity. You can create a world with the ethics of Christianity. You can create a world even with a big part of it being, actual characters of Christian persuasion who, won't shut up about, the message of conversion. But what you cannot have is those be the primary thing. The Christian message of of ethics. Love thy neighbor like you love yourself. Like just like you love God as you love your neighbor, and love your neighbor as you love God. That's actually being done perhaps a few times in video games, but it's such a general thing. You can still give it a very Christian overtone and flavor to make it very clear that the hint is towards the emphasis of Christianity, and you do very fine. I think most people would actually have no problem with that. It would be a fine enough story. You can have like mystery, like adventure games in which perhaps you're a character like like Drake from like Drake's Fortune on PS3. I forget what the fuck those games are called. Never played them, but everybody loved them back then. And just have a mystery of somebody realizing, hey, these weird things like the Nephilim and the Ark of the Covenant and whatnot, they're real. And so you have a story kind of based on like the realization that these things from hey there. It's a nice little bulldog. The realization that somehow like the history of the Old Testament and even the New Testament may actually be real, and therefore you have some kind of like mystery, and perhaps the main character goes through this whole revelation of holy shit, this shit's real. What do you do about that? Should I certainly convert and say hallelujah, glory to Jesus? You can have issues of like metaphysics. Some games actually try this. Not so much the Christian stuff, because the Christian stuff is really abstract. You can't really make it interestingly, visually metaphysical. Besides, the Revelations chapter at the end, there's not much that's exciting on a symbolic or visual basis in Christian metaphysics, even though it's the most radical metaphysics of all, quite frankly. There's a game. The Japanese are the only ones who have the balls to do this, because they're the only ones who aren't Christians, and so therefore they have no idea about respecting and like pissing people off by making games based on these kinds of metaphysics. There's a game called El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron for the Wii. I don't know how good of a game it is. Wasn't a big hit, but it's basically taking a lot of themes from Kabbalah and basing itself on the Book of Enoch, which is indeed not a Christian book. Well, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has it in its canon. It's part of Christian metaphysics, and so you're playing as Metatron, who's this pretty boy motherfucker fighting I guess these angels who decide that they don't want to follow God anymore, so they came down to Earth to fuck around. And they gamify it, and the angels don't look that cool, and whatever. It's kind of weird. It's one of those Japanese things, but you can do that. You don't have to gamify it that much. Like picking Metatron as the main character. Come on. Metatron is not like, say, Shiva or Vishnu, where like they fuck around. Their stories about like fucking around in the real world. They like to like get down and get dirty in all senses. Whereas Metatron is an abstract being, metaphysical in a much broader way, and like making Metatron this action hero does not make any fucking sense. So that's not a great example. Xenogears, the whole Xeno series actually is like heavily based on like Christian Gnosticism, which indeed is like very different to standard Christianity, in which like almost all Christians nowadays consider those heretics. But if you look at the Xenogears, the ethical message of Christianity of love, forgiveness, redemption, salvation, it's all there, minus the stuff on the issue of that there is a fake God and there is a real God, and like they literally have this mechanical machine monster, biological weapon monster thing called Deus, and they have this other thing called the way of existence or something like that, which is supposed to be the real God, but they don't really, they imply that it's God-like, and one of the characters does think it is God, and and it comes down, and once it's released you find out this is being like this kind of like dual fight between these two entities. One of them was trapped in an object called the Zohar, the other one's used the Zohar as a power. Deus is evil, the way of existence is indifferent to say the least, Although, once he's saved by the main character and released, apparently, well, not a he, but it, or them, more properly speaking, they're like, would be nice to, free all of you from this horrible hell that is called embodiment to the material world. It's nicer up there in the higher dimension. It's heaven. And you can come along with me. And the main character's like, no, thanks. God almost kills everybody, in the attempt to just, wanting to take them, Obviously, you have to be released from your mortal coil, which means you gotta die. So, beyond that, that's... Xenogears is probably the closest to, a genuinely Christian game, like explicitly, even though obviously it's heretically Christian, but nonetheless it is Christian, and I think any, self-respecting, thinking Christian could look at that game and go, yeah, there's plenty here that's of much value. You can enjoy it, you can like it, you can obviously appreciate it as a Christian, you can appreciate how it teaches other people through art, about Christian values, even if they don't realize that these are Christian values and whatnot. Games like those, by the way, are ones that get people to realize that thinking in religion is not as daft and stupid and brain dead as they thought. But anyways, now there's a bunch of people walking by, and I'm running close to about an hour on this video, and there's not much else to talk about, and it's getting dark. So I will cut the video here. For those of you, like I said, who want to hang around, go ahead and join my Discord. I think it is on my About page. I will check and make sure. Beyond that, see you around. Look forward to new writings, new videos, and give the video a like. Subscribe on Patreon. Send me some money. I can never have enough of it.